Okay, we'll go on to the next witness, Ben Capelle from Laketran. There he is, okay. I'm assuming you're Ben?
That's me.
Okay, welcome. Yes, you may have heard, because we have so many witnesses, we're asking the witnesses to testify for 5 minutes, and then of course the committee will ask you questions.
Absolutely.
And we do have your full testimony available to the committee, so you know that it's available to them to look at. Okay. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee, for having me. My name is Ben Capelle. I'm the CEO of Laketran, which is a transit system just east of Cleveland, up by the lake. We are very unique as far as transit systems in Ohio. We are one of the few dedicated suburban transit systems that exists. That means the service we provide is a little bit different than a lot of the services that are provided in Ohio. We have the traditional bus you think of that goes every quarter of a mile. We have buses that go to downtown Cleveland every day. But our bread and butter is the smaller buses that are dedicated to taking seniors to doctor's appointments, people with disabilities to work, and all the trips that those folks have no other option, and we are their lifeline. The state budget allowed us to do some things that we could never do in the past, that we had been asked for years. One of those was to provide transit service along a very industrial busy corridor in Lake County. There's about 7,000 manufacturing jobs there. There's now a dedicated bus route on that road due to state funding that gives about 55,000 residents access to those jobs. We've heard from manufacturers for years that they needed transit service for their entry-level workers. They could not hire workers because they did not have bus service. We do not have the financial capacity to do that until the state budget. The $70 million a year that the state committed to transit provided access to those jobs, and there are now people working at those manufacturers that weren't working there before. That's incredibly important for Lake County and the state of Ohio, because those manufacturers have told us if they can't find employees, they have no choice but to move. So giving them access to employees is critical, and that state money was a direct path for that to occur. The other thing I'd just like to mention is there's been a lot of talk about the CARES Act. One of the challenges when you operate a lot of small buses like we do, social distance, you can't have more than one person on that bus at a time. So normally, where we could have 3 or 4 people on that bus and be more efficient, it was great. During the coronavirus, still to this day, we have had to cut our efficiency massively just to be able to provide the same service that we were providing before. And that's seniors to vaccines, seniors to shopping, and people with disabilities to work. So the CARES Act money helped us. It was, we've spent it, it's gone. It allowed our services to continue to run in a socially distanced and safe way. But the state money is really, a more sustainable long-term path to continuing access to those jobs. So I would ask that we keep that money the same. And I'll quickly share one personal story about how transit's not always what you think. I'm 38, I'm mostly healthy, I could stand to lose some pounds. But I was building my garage in 2019 and I fell off a ladder. I broke my leg very badly. And I wasn't thinking about public transit at the time. I was thinking about, oh my goodness, my leg is broken. But after that, I live alone. I have a dog, but he's not very useful for medical trips. And so my sister could take me to doctor's appointments, but she also has a full-time job. So for me to get to work, to get to some of my medical appointments and just conduct regular daily life, I was 100% reliant on public transit to come to my house basically and take me to where I needed to go. Couldn't put any weight on my leg, couldn't crutch very far. So without that, I would have been a prisoner in my house. And my story is, it's about me, of course, but that's not a unique story around the state. When a senior loses their ability to drive, they become a prisoner of their home unless they have access to quality public transportation like we provide. And so I'd urge the committee to think about those unique situations that exist around the state, that public transit fills that gap that wouldn't exist otherwise. So I know you have my testimony, so I will kind of cut my remarks short, and I appreciate the committee's time to talk.
Well, thank you very much, and hopefully you're fully recovered from your fall.
Mostly, yes.
Okay. Reverend Skindle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your testimony. What do you think would it take in Ohio, or what is being done to replicate the types of services that you provide in public transit throughout other communities in Ohio?
You know, one of the most important things is, the transit funding scheme is really three major sources: there's local funds, state funds, federal funds. In Ohio, state funds are sort of the weak link, and a dedicated source of revenue to transit is really an essential step forward to being able to provide services like that around the state. Unfortunately, in the transit industry, it takes us a long time to get things done, not because we don't work quickly, but because if we order a bus, it takes 18 months for it to show up. You can't go down to the bus dealership and pick one up. So having that dedicated money for a long time allows us to plan and execute those projects that can't be done at the snap of a finger. So really, a form of dedicated funding at the state level is really the best way to get that done.
Representative Skindle? Thank you. Representative Troy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Capelle, good to see you again. For 20 years, I was appointing your board members to the Laketran Board of Trustees, so you can either thank me or, condemn me for doing that. But the question I have is with what your system has done lately is kind of move to trying to get folks to the job centers, to help our local businesses, things like that. Primarily, we're just maybe shuttling people back and forth downtown, but I know you've now changed, moving people like from the Menor Headlands area to the Tyler Boulevard corridor there in Menor and all that. How does this funding shortfall that's proposed in this budget impact your progress in that particular area?
It would be really challenging to continue that service long term. We might be able to continue it for another year. We would have some very difficult decisions to make. It's a hard decision to make. Do you stop providing a service to someone who just recently got a job because of new access? Or do you stop providing service to the senior who might go to dialysis once a week? And so it really would require some really difficult decisions. And we have not made those yet. But it would be very challenging, and it would very negatively impact a lot of citizens in Lake County.
Representative Troy? Thank you. Other questions of the witness? Representative Crawley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Capelle, for your testimony today. I just have a quick question. I was going through your testimony, and I didn't see how much revenue has Laketran lost over the pandemic?
Its revenue loss is right around $2.5 million. The challenge is there's a revenue loss, but there's also an efficiency loss. And so we can't only look at the revenue we've lost. We also have to look at the extra money we've had to spend. We had to institute a whole new process to clean, sanitize, and sort of make sure buses were cleaner than they were. We cleaned our buses every day in the past, but we had to take additional steps to continue that safety. And so, revenue loss is one piece of the pie, which was certainly very devastating. That other piece of the pie is that lack of efficiency and that requirement to keep things, spotless, basically.
Representative Crawley? Thank you. Other questions of the witness? Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Our next witness is India Birdsong, Greater Cleveland Regional Transit.